My parents did not invite me to their 40th anniversary party. They said, "You are just a common machinist at the local factory." This was a program for elites. I quietly moved away from them. Few months later, they needed me. What happened next will shock you. Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Sharon from France. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I never saw it coming. That's the honest truth. My parents' 40th anniversary was supposed to be a big deal. 40 years of marriage, a milestone I figured I'd be part of. I was wrong. It hit me like a punch to the gut when Mom called that Thursday afternoon. I'd just gotten off my shift at the factory, hands still smudged with grease, when the phone buzzed on my kitchen counter. Her voice came through sharp, like she'd rehearsed it. "Jacob, about the anniversary party." She started, no hello, no warmth. "It's this weekend, as you know. But it's a program for elites. Not factory hands. You understand." I stood there, gripping the phone, my thumb hovering over the end call button. Elites? Factory hands. I'd been turning steel into precision parts for 10 years. Steady work, good work, and she made it sound like I swept floors for a living. I waited for Dad to cut in, to say something, anything. He didn't. Just silence on his end, like he'd signed off on her script. I muttered an okay, and hung up before she could say more. What else was there to say? That night, I clocked into the factory like usual. The hum of the lathes usually steadied me, but not then. My hands moved on autopilot, slotting a rod into the machine, setting the measurements, but my head was elsewhere. I kept seeing Mom's face, all pinched and superior, and Dad's blank stare from years of letting her run the show. My coworker Sam caught me staring at the same piece too long and raised an eyebrow. "You good, Jake?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Yeah, I lied. Just tired." He didn't push, and I didn't spill. Sam wasn't the type to pry, and I wasn't the type to unload. But as the shift dragged on, something hardened in me. I wasn't just their son. I was the guy they decided wasn't good enough. By the time the whistle blew at 3 a.m., I'd made up my mind. I wasn't sticking around to be their punching bag. Back at my apartment, I didn't sleep. I started packing instead. Not much, just my clothes, my tools, a couple books I never got around to reading. The place was a rental anyway, month to month, no strings. I'd lived light ever since I left their house at 18, like I'd always known I'd need to bolt someday. The toolbox was the heaviest thing, steel wrenches, calipers, a hammer I'd had since Dad gave it to me when I was 12. I almost left it behind, but I didn't. Not sure why. By 5, I called my landlord, told him I was out. He grumbled about notice, but I said I'd pay the extra month, and that shut him up. Then I loaded my truck. It was an old Ford, beat up but reliable, kind of like me. I took one last look at the apartment, bare walls, a couch I'd never liked, and locked the door. The plan was simple. Head to Milton, 30 miles east. I'd heard they had a decent factory, and I could start over where no one knew me as Margaret and Richard Hensley's disappointment. Driving out of town felt strange. The streets were empty, just me and the headlights cutting through the dark. I passed their house on the way, the big, gaudy thing they'd bought when Dad's real estate gigs peaked. White columns, too many windows, like it was trying to scream money it didn't have anymore. I didn't stop, didn't even slow down. But in the rear view, I caught it shrinking smaller and smaller until it was gone. That's when I felt it, a twist in my chest, part relief, part something I couldn't name. Milton wasn't much, just a grid of brick buildings and a diner that looked stuck in the 80s. I found a cheap motel off the highway and crashed for a few hours. When I woke up, I hit the ground running. The factory there was hiring, Harrington Steel, a mid-size outfit, and I walked in with my toolbox and a resume that spoke for itself. The foreman, a guy named Pete with a handshake like a vice, liked what he saw. "You start Monday," he said, no fuss. "We need guys who know their way around a lathe." I nodded, thanked him, and that was that. By noon, I'd signed a lease on a one-bedroom near the plant. Nothing fancy, but it had a corner I could turn into a workbench. I didn't call Mom or Dad to tell them I'd left. Didn't text. They'd figure it out when they needed something, and I wasn't there to pick up the pieces. That first night in Milton, I sat on the floor of my empty place, toolbox open beside me. I ran my fingers over the hammer Dad gave me, its handle worn smooth from years of use. I wondered if he'd even remember giving it to me, or if he'd just nod along when Mom decided I didn't fit their shiny little world. I put it back in the box and snapped the lid shut. Whatever they thought of me, I was done proving myself to them. I had a job, a roof, and a life to build. That was enough. Or so I told myself. I settled into Milton like a gear slotting into place. That first week, I kept my head down at Harrington Steel, learning the machines and the crew. The work was familiar, metal screaming under my hands, measurements down to the thousandth. But the faces were new. Sam, the guy I'd met on day one, became my shadow. He was a wiry sort, quick with a joke, and he didn't ask about my past. I liked that. We'd grab beers after shifts at a dive called Rusty's, and he'd ramble about his ex-wife or the '69 Mustang he swore he'd fix someday. I'd nod, sip my drink, and let him fill the silence. It was easy company, and I needed easy. My apartment started feeling like mine, too. I'd scored a workbench from a guy down the hall, solid oak, scratched but sturdy, and set it up in the corner. Nights, I'd tinker there, messing with old parts I'd salvaged from the factory scrap bin. A busted gearshift one time, a valve the next, just stuff to keep my hands busy. I didn't think about Mom and Dad much. Didn't let myself. They hadn't called, and I hadn't expected them to. Whatever they were up to back in that big house, it wasn't my problem anymore. Meanwhile, 30 miles away, they were throwing their anniversary party. I found out later from a guy at the factory who'd heard it through the grapevine, small towns talk, even across borders. Mom and Dad had gone all out. Caterers, a string quartet, the works. They'd invited every suit they knew, people who drove cars worth more than my yearly pay. I could picture it, Mom in some glittery dress, Dad shaking hands with a fake grin, both of them pretending their bank account wasn't a house of cards. They'd always been good at that game. I didn't envy them. Sounded exhausting. Back in Milton, I kept building. The job paid decent, enough to cover rent and a few extras. I bought a cheap TV, a coffee maker, started sleeping through the night instead of staring at the ceiling. Sam dragged me to a barbecue at his place one Sunday. His sister was there, Ellie, a barista with a sharp laugh and eyes that didn't miss much. We hit it off, swapped numbers. Nothing serious, just a spark. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward, not just spinning in place. But while I was piecing my life together, Mom and Dad's was coming apart. I didn't know the half of it then, didn't want to, but the signs were there if they bothered to look. Dad's real estate hustle had dried up years back. He'd been coasting on old deals and bad bets. Mom spent like the money would never run out: new furniture, trips to impress her clique. They'd taken out a second mortgage on that gaudy house, then a third, piling debt on debt. By summer's end, the cracks showed. Creditors started calling, polite at first, then not so much. Dad dodged them, told Mom it had sorted itself out. She believed him because she always had. I got wind of trouble in August. Pete, the foreman, mentioned it offhand during a break. "Heard your folks' place might be on the block soon," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Rough market." I shrugged, kept my face blank. "Not my circus," I said, and he let it drop. But it stuck with me. On the block? That house was their crown jewel, white columns and all. If they were losing it, things were worse than I'd guessed. Part of me wanted to feel bad, but the bigger part remembered Mom's voice on that call. Elites, not factory hands. Let them figure it out. They didn't. By September, the calls turned to letters, red stamped notices piling up on their marble counter. Dad finally cracked open the books, saw the numbers didn't add up. Mom panicked, started selling jewelry she bragged about at parties. Their friends stopped coming by. Funny how that works when the champagne dries up. One night, over a bottle of cheap whiskey they'd never have touched before, Dad said it out loud. "We need Jake." Mom balked. "Jacob? He's off sulking somewhere. He won't help. He's got a job," Dad pressed. "Stable. Banks like that. He could co-sign, get us a refinance." She stared at him, then at the phone. I wasn't there, but I'd bet my toolbox she hated the idea crawling back to the son she'd tossed aside. Dad probably hated it too, but he was out of moves. They'd built their whole life on looking rich, and now it was caving in. Me? I was the one thing they hadn't burned through yet. She picked up the phone, her manicured nails tapping the screen. Dad watched, jaw tight. They didn't call right then, too proud, maybe, or too drunk. But the seed was planted. I didn't know it yet, but my quiet little world in Milton was about to get loud. Real loud. Fall crept into Milton by October, and I was hitting my stride. The job at Harrington Steel felt like home, machines humming, steel bending to my will. I'd earned a nod from Pete, the foreman, after fixing a jam press nobody else could crack. Good hands, Hensley, he'd said, and that was enough for me. Outside work, things were solid too. Ellie and I had grabbed coffee a few times. She'd tease me about my tool obsession. I'd fire back about her latte art. It was light, easy, a bright spot I hadn't expected. I'd almost stopped thinking about Mom and Dad. Almost. Their silence suited me fine. I figured they were too busy playing high society to notice I'd gone. My new life was mine, built from scratch, and I wasn't looking back. Then the phone rang. It was a Tuesday night, me hunched over my workbench, tweaking a busted motor I'd fished from the scrap pile. The screen lit up with Mom's number, and my gut twisted. I let it buzz once, twice, then picked up. Couldn't tell you why, maybe curiosity, maybe something dumber. Jacob, she started, her voice syrupy, like she was selling me something. Have you been? I didn't bite. What do you want, Mom? A pause, then Dad's voice cut in, gruff but shaky. We've hit a rough patch, son. Need a little help. I leaned back, the motor forgotten. Help how? Mom took over, smoother now. The house, there's some financial trouble. You've got that steady job. We thought you could co-sign for a refinance. Just a signature, really. I laughed. Couldn't help it. It came out sharp, bitter, like a blade hitting a burr. You serious? After that elite party crap, you're calling me for a favor? Silence. Then Dad again, quieter. We're in deep, Jake. It's not a game. I pictured them in that overdone kitchen, Mom clutching her pearls, Dad staring at his shoes. Part of me wanted details. How bad was it? How'd they sink so low? But the bigger part remembered her words from months back, slicing me down to nothing. I gripped the phone tighter. You've got your elites, I said, slow and cold. Ask them. I hung up before they could reply. The room went quiet, just the hum of the fridge behind me. I tossed the phone on the bench and stared at it, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't. Good. I picked up the motor, tried to focus, but my hands wouldn't settle. Their voices kept looping, Mom's fake sugar, Dad's desperation. I'd shut them down hard, and it felt right. So why was I still wound up? Next day at the factory, I was off. Fumbled a cut, had to redo it. Sam noticed, sidled up during break while I nursed a coffee. You look like hell, he said, blunt as ever. What's eating you? I hesitated. Sam didn't know the whole story, just bits I'd let slip about moving. But he had a way of listening that didn't feel like a trap. So I spilled it. The call, the party snub, the nerve of them asking me to bail them out. He whistled low when I finished. Damn. That's cold, man. My old man pulled something like that once, cut me out, then came begging when his bar tab ran dry. I told him to shove it. What happened? I asked, curious despite myself. He figured it out. Or didn't. Haven't talked in years. He shrugged, like it was no big deal. Point is, you don't owe them squat. They made their bed. I nodded, but it didn't sit as clean as I wanted. Sam's story was his mine felt murkier. I got back to work, pushed through the shift, but their call kept gnawing at me. Not the request, screw that, but the way Dad's voice cracked. I'd never heard him sound small before. That night, unpacking a box I'd ignored since moving, I found an old photo. Me, maybe 10, sandwiched between them on a dock. Dad holding a fish I'd caught, Mom smiling like she meant it. I'd forgotten that day, him showing me how to cast, her packing sandwiches we ate by the water. It wasn't all bad back then. I traced the frame, then shoved it back in the box. Didn't matter. They'd picked their side, and I'd picked mine. Still, sleep didn't come easy. I kept seeing Dad's face, not the blank one from the party call, but the one from that fishing trip, proud for once. And Mom, had she ever apologized in her life? I doubted it. They'd probably call again, push harder. I'd say no again, and that'd be that. But as I lay there, the motor still half fixed on my bench, I wondered if saying no was as simple as it sounded. I'd built a wall between us, tall, solid mine. So why did it feel like it might crack? November rolled into Milton, and I was holding steady, mostly. Work at Harrington Steel kept me sharp. I'd nailed a tricky job on a turbine shaft, earned a slap on the back from Pete. Ellie was a regular thing now, too. We'd hit the diner after her shifts, splitting fries and trading stories. She'd started calling my workbench the other woman, and I'd laugh, liking how she got me without pushing. Life was good, better than it had been in years. But good doesn't mean safe, and I should have known that. Word started trickling in about Mom and Dad. Pete dropped it first, casual, like he was passing on sports scores. Heard your folks lost the house, he said one afternoon, wiping down a machine. Bank took it last week. I kept my hands busy, tightening a bolt, and grunted a huh. He didn't dig deeper, but it landed like a brick. The house, those white columns, that marble counter Mom loved, it was gone? I didn't call to confirm. Didn't need to. I could imagine them scrambling, and I told myself I didn't care. Then Sam chimed in a few days later, over beers at Rusty's. Buddy of mine hauled their stuff to storage, he said. Fancy chairs, a piano, whole mess. Your mom was yelling at the movers like it was their fault. He smirked, but I didn't. I pictured her, hair perfect, voice shrill, lashing out while Dad stood there, useless. Sam caught my look. You ain't surprised, are you? Nope, I said, and downed my drink. Surprised, no. Unsettled, yeah. I'd figured they'd hit bottom eventually, but hearing it made it real. Still, I kept my line firm. They'd cut me out, so they could climb out alone. At the factory, trouble brewed. Rumors of layoffs started circling. Harrington was losing a big contract, and heads would roll. Pete didn't say much, just tightened his jaw when we asked. I wasn't panicked. My work was solid, but it put a dent in the calm I'd built. Ellie noticed it too, one night when I zoned out mid-conversation. You're somewhere else, she said, nudging me. I brushed it off, blamed the long hours. She didn't buy it, but she let it go. Then they showed up. It was a Friday, late, rain hammering the roof of my apartment. I was at the workbench, sanding a gear I'd cut, when someone knocked, hard, insistent. I opened the door, and there they were, Mom and Dad, soaked through, looking like they'd aged a decade since I'd last seen them. Mom's makeup was smeared, Dad's coat hung off him like a sack. No car in the lot. Had they walked? Hitchhiked? I didn't ask. Jacob, Mom said, voice trembling but still trying for control. We need to talk. I stepped back, not inviting them in yet, arms crossed. About what? Dad spoke up, eyes on the floor. We're done, son. House is gone, savings too. We've got nowhere left. I stared at them, these two strangers who'd raised me. Mom's lips quivered, but she didn't cry, not her style. Dad looked like he might, though, and that hit me harder than I expected. I thought of the photo I'd found, the fishing trip, and pushed it down. They'd had months to reach out, to fix this before it blew up. Instead, they'd waited till the walls caved in. Why now? I asked, voice flat. You didn't need me for your party. Didn't need me when you called begging for a signature? Mom flinched. That was a mistake. We were wrong. Damn right you were. I snapped. But it's a little late for sorry. Dad lifted his head, finally meeting my eyes. We're not asking for money. Just a chance. We've got nothing, Jake. I stood there, rain dripping off them onto my floor, and felt the wall I'd built start to shake. Not crumble, just shake. I saw Ellie's face in my head, telling me I was too stubborn sometimes. Sam's too, saying I didn't know them. But there they were, my parents, broken in a way I'd never pictured. Mom shifted, her pride cracking, and said something I never thought I'd hear. You were never common to us, she whispered. Not really. My hand hovered on the door. I could slam it, send them back to whatever hole they'd crawled from. They'd earned it, years of looking down, months of silence, that damn call. But Dad's slumped shoulders, Mom's shaky hands, they weren't the elites they'd pretended to be. They were just people, out of moves, standing in my doorway like I was their last shot. I didn't say anything. Didn't know what to say. My fingers tightened on the knob, and I felt the weight of it. Everything I'd walked away from, everything they'd thrown away, crashing into this one moment. I could turn them out, keep my life clean. Or I could let them in, see what was left to salvage. The rain kept pounding, and I stood there, stuck, knowing whatever I picked would change everything. Winter bit into Milton that December, and I was staring down my parents in my doorway, rain pooling at their feet. Mom's words hung there. You were never common to us, and Dad's slumped frame backed her up like he'd run out of fight. I'd spent months building a life without them, a wall to keep their mess out. Now it was trembling, and I had to decide, shut them out or crack the door open. My hand stayed on the knob, knuckles white, while they waited, shivering. Let us in, Jake, Dad said, voice hoarse. Just to talk. I didn't move right away. I thought of Ellie's laugh, Sam's shrug, the steady hum of the factory, all mine, earned clean. Then I thought of that fishing trip photo, buried in a box, and the way they'd looked at me back then. Different people, maybe, before the white columns and fake friends. I stepped aside, jerking my head. Fine. Talk. They shuffled in, dripping on my floor, and I shut the door. Mom perched on the edge of my couch like it might bite. Dad just stood, hands in his pockets. I leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, waiting. They didn't waste time. We've lost everything, Mom said, her usual polish gone. House, savings, the car, they repossessed it yesterday. We're staying at a motel off 12th, but that's done tomorrow. Friends bailed too, Dad added. Nobody's got room for us. I nodded, not surprised. Their clique was all show. First sign of trouble, they'd scatter. So what's the plan? I asked. You're here. What do you want from me? Mom looked at Dad, then back. A place to start over. We can't do it alone. I almost laughed again, that same bitter edge from the phone call. Start over? You had a shot months ago. I told you to ask your elites. We tried. Dad snapped, then softened. They're gone. You're all we've got. That hit different. Not the guilt trip. I wasn't buying that, but the truth of it. They'd torched every bridge but mine, and I was still standing. I paced to the window, staring at the rain-slicked lot, and let it sink in. They weren't asking for a handout this time, not just a signature. They were asking for me. I turned back, mind racing. The factory was shaky, layoffs hit that week, but Pete kept me on, said my work was too good to cut. I had savings, a roof, a life. They had nothing. But I wasn't some charity case son ready to roll over. If I did this, it'd be my way. Okay, I said, slow, watching their faces lift. I'll help. But the house, I'm getting it back. My name on the deed. You live there because I say so, and that elite garbage stops now. No games, no looking down. You agree, or you're out. Mom's mouth opened, then shut. Dad blinked, like he hadn't heard right. The house, he said. Bank's got it. I'll figure it out. I cut in. I've got a job, credit. You don't. Take it or leave it. They didn't argue. Mom nodded first, quick, like she'd grabbed a lifeline. Dad followed, slower, but firm. Deal, he said. I didn't trust it'd be smooth. They'd spent decades on their high horse, but it was a start. I grabbed my keys. Motel's done tomorrow? Get your stuff. You're crashing here tonight. We drove in silence, my truck rattling through the storm. Their room was a dump, stained carpet, one bag each. They'd sold or lost the rest. Back at my place, I threw blankets on the couch, pointed them there. Sleep. We'll sort it tomorrow. They didn't argue that either. Next week, I made calls. Bank wouldn't budge at first, foreclosure was final, but I found a guy, a realtor Sam knew, who sniffed out an auction date. I bid what I could, scraped every dime, and won it. Not cheap, but mine. The white columns looked smaller when I drove up, keys in hand. Mom and Dad trailed me inside, quiet, like they didn't recognize it without their old life plastered on it. Factory settled too, layoff stopped, and Pete hinted at a raise. Ellie stuck around, unfazed by my new tenants. You're a softy, she teased once, and I smirked, didn't deny it. Maybe I was, a little. That first night in the house, I left them unpacking and headed back to Milton. My workbench was calling. I'd started a gear project, something small but tricky. I sat there, tools in hand, and worked it slow. The metal gave under my fingers, precise, clean. I heard Mom's voice through the wall, soft, talking to Dad about where to put a lamp. No yelling, no orders. Different. I fitted the gear into its slot, tested it. Clicked perfect, smooth as anything I'd made. I leaned back, feeling the weight lift, not all of it, but enough. The house was mine now, their lifeline too. We'd figure out the rest, day by day. no promises. They'd hurt me, deep, but I'd pulled them up anyway, on my terms. That was the measure of it. If you liked this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Drop a comment. Would you have let them in or shut the door? Let's hear it. New stories drop every day. Don't miss out. See you soon in our next story.